Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Josh Bowman, co-owner of CakePie Games, co-host of Tabletop Submarine podcast. His newest title, Beach Day, is currently on Kickstarter. Josh, welcome to the binge. How you doing, my friend?
I am, it's crazy because Kickstarter is happening, but I'm doing good, all things considering.
And I know, I'm sure most of our audience knows who you are, at least vicariously through the Submarine podcast, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. Before we kind of go down that path, for those who don't know, I thought we'd kind of get a little bit into your past and kind of how you got into this industry. I find it fascinating when I finally get to talk to someone else who hosts a podcast and kind of their journey and how they got there. So why don't we start there? How did you start in the whole board game industry?
I think back right before the pandemic hit, I got into board games thanks to a neighbor of mine who had a ton of board games. And with that, I started, looking out into the hobby, figuring out what this hobby actually was, getting into design because I like creating things. And really my step forward in the industry is that I met these guys from the Level Up Board Game podcast, which is a small podcast these two guys up in Pittsburgh started. And they asked me to contribute to their podcast, and that started avalanching into that. And we, sending in things about thoughts about games I was playing. And from there, I got into wanting to make my own podcast, the Tabletop Submarine. And with Tabletop Submarine, which we'll get into, that really opened a lot of doors for me, even beyond design. Because, like we'll talk about, I'm sure we'll touch on Tabletop Submarine later, but that podcast allows a lot of good avenues for me to meet people.
Yeah.
And in a very non-encroaching way, because sometimes the bane of being a designer is that when you approach a publisher, they may or may not shrink away from you depending on the relationship you've made with them.
Yeah.
It just happens. I mean, you're a publisher, you get it sometimes. Yeah. There are those designers who do their job well, and they have good relationships even if they are pitching game, and there's some that don't. And I think I've been grateful because of the podcast. I've been able to create relationships with these publishers. And now I'm in the industry now. I'm a little fish in a big pond, but it's good to be in the pond. That's the best part about it.
I think we're all kind of little fish in a big pond, right? This is probably one of the only industries that's just full of tiny fish. It really is. The majority of this industry are small players. I've often said this on the podcast that most companies are 1 to 3 people, right? In this industry, and then they bolt on kind of the different resources they need as they go. But we're all doing this because we love the industry, and I echo your sentiment on the podcast because for me, it was something that really helped me grow my network of friends. Quite frankly, I've met a lot of people in this industry, and it is a great way for you to. I think opening doors is kind of a byproduct of that, right? For me, it really is kind of just saying, okay, how can I put my little stamp on this industry? What can I do to create content? Like you're a content creator now, right? At the same time as doing my own designs and publishing my own games. And those things all kind of coalesce into this kind of broader network that you've become part of, that then can help you if you have questions, if you have someone you need to reach out to, if you want to jump on a podcast with someone else who was on your podcast and things like this, right? It really is a very good, loving network to be part of. And I would say that for anybody that is, if the reality of putting a game on the market is you have to do marketing. Marketing is going to be part of it. If you hate doing marketing, the best thing you do is pitch your game to other people and then find a way of building your network there. But if you're going to self-publish, that comes along with the gig. And part of that marketing can be achieved through content creation. But that content creation needs to start kind of outside of, being in service to your game and more being in service to the industry. And then your game can then bolt onto that, right? Perfect example I would give is a good buddy of mine, Eric Goes Gaming. He's got a great content that he does. Often he'll go out to local like dollar stores, right, or low discount stores, and he'll find these incredible game finds, whether it's something he finds that's really cool that helps with game design. Maybe it's a neat little thing he finds to bring to game night that enhances game night, or it's just cool stuff that he finds. But that's kind of his little hook he's been doing for now for a couple years. Now he's getting into getting ready to publish a game of his own, and those two things can now come together because he has an audience he can start tapping right on that, and people who have a vested interest in him, in his content, then now they can kind of say, okay, well, let's see what else we can do to support that. And why I think that's important is when you have, like you and I, creating these podcasts, it's out of our own pocket for the most part, right? We're creating the content because we like creating the content. So we rely on the support of our games from our audience to help fuel the podcast. Those things now come in hand. And quite frankly, I often say that when I do a campaign, I say, hey, if you're a fan of the podcast, please back this game because this podcast is out of my pocket. The software costs have to do, the database cost, the streaming software cost, all of that is out of pocket. And I use some of the funds from these games I create to help pay for that, right? So, as we kind of go through with even like Tabletop Submarine, same thing, right? Hopefully your audience from Tabletop Submarine is helping, back these games, because that then helps you continue on with things like creating the great content that you create, which is fun. How did you, because I know like Andrew Stiles, and that's how you and I first met, was through Andrew, and I think he's like a co-host, or he guest hosts on Tabletop Submarine. Is that?
He's a co-host. Andrew's my co-host.
Yeah. He wasn't on my episode. I missed out on him. I'm like, what? He was not even on the episode. But how did you guys get together? Like, how did you guys meet?
So I got some advice from Patrick Havard, who runs Escape WinterCon in Florida, that if I wanted to be involved in the industry, just to put out stuff. And so I was like, well, I really don't want to do a YouTube channel because I don't like video stuff. And plus, I don't really like the way I look. I don't like the way I sound either. But like, I podcasting is what I mainly consume anyway, because I just don't have time to sit down and watch a YouTube video usually. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll start a podcast. And from there, I was like, well, what do I want to do? Well, I don't think anyone wants to hear what I have to say about games. I don't think I'm there yet as a person. Like, where's my authority come from? I think a lot of people start review channels. It's like, well, I mean, why should I listen to you? I don't, I do some reviews now on Tabletop Submarine because some people actually care what I have to say. But generally speaking, that was my thought. I was like, well, why does anybody care what I have to say? So, well, what do I want to do? Well, I really like talking to people and hearing their perspectives and stories. So what if I just did a podcast about hearing people's favorite tabletop memories or their stories? And so I started talking with some people who I knew, and Andrew was someone who I didn't know. And we just got to talking on Discord, and I just asked him, like, hey, do you want to be my co-host on this idea I have? And he's like, you know what? Sure. Why the heck not? And that's how we met. We literally like, want to do a podcast together, two strangers on the internet. And from there, we have our regular episodes. We have our Periscopes, which is actually what you were on. You were actually on a Periscope episode, which is specifically about Cities of Venus.
Yeah.
Where when we invite you back on again, if you have time, of course, it'll be a full episode about your favorite tabletop memory. So we have that show now. We have our Torpedoes, which is our episodes about when we actually do reviews of games we were actually really excited about, which are, funnily enough, some of our highest paid episodes because our backers know if that we do a torpedo, it's going to be really good about why we like the game. And then we have our con coverage, which is pretty big actually too. We need to get back on that. Andrew and I have just been super busy with his wine cellar and digging for dinos, and me trying to get this Kickstarter going. That it's a thing now. Tabletop Submarine is a thing. People recognize us from our voices now. They want to say hi to us. So that's how that got started.
It's crazy, right? And is it fair to say almost like the imposter syndrome, right? When you make a comment like, why do they care about my opinion, right? Like, I'm just a regular guy, but I felt that when I got it. I still feel that sometimes, right? And what are we, 300 and some odd episodes now? There's still that, do I know enough about the industry? Like, I'm not a Tom Vassell, right? I don't have a library of thousands of games. Is there value there I'm providing to people? And I can kind of relate to what you're saying is like, okay, I'm going to find my own kind of hook, and it then becomes about the people, right? And less about the game. And there's hundreds of channels out there focusing specifically on games,
Yeah.
right? But not as many, less than a dozen, I'd say, actually focusing specifically on people and the people in the
Yeah.
industry. So that's kind of where I think our mutual hooks are, which is for me, what I like people. I like chatting with others and getting to know
Yeah, me
people.
too.
Yeah,
It's
and so
great.
for me, I
Yeah.
think that's the kind of that's what I find intriguing. And what I find intriguing is just how people got in. Like it's so weird the different jobs people have in this industry, and
Hmm.
the different careers they have, and the motivations as to why they started a playing board games, and then b even taking the next step, which is okay, now I'm going to go and create something, right? And I'm going to put
Yeah.
myself out there, and I'm going to get people to try something I've created, and then take that even a step further and say, okay, I'm going to actually try to publish that, which is another full
Yeah.
beast on its own, right? So
It is. Yeah.
for Beach Day, this is, I think, the second game that you said you had created.
Yes.
Where did the idea of this come from? And I'm sure you're going to say you're sitting on a beach at one point, but like, where did the idea germinate from?
I do live on a beach, or like so it helps that. Well, the idea came from it was a company first. It was CakePie Games first.
Mm,
Um, I wanted to try create as I'm at the crossroads in my life where I'm trying to think of where I want to commit myself to,
mm.
as far as do I want to go where my current job is restaurants. I
Ah,
could easily maybe lean into that, open more restaurants that I have, and try to do restaurateur, or maybe I could go into my hobby and make board games a thing. Both are viable, and I have the passion for both. Um, and so I was like, well, if I don't at least try to make a board game company, if I don't at least try, I would regret it. So I'd rather go in with no regrets. So I started thinking about, well, what kind of games do I want to do? I looked around at all the different various publishers at these cons I would go to. What are people buying? Well, if you look at All Play, 25th Century, it's like these small games that are quick to set up, quick to play, quick to
yeah,
demo, that are just flying off the shelves.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's make a company just based around that.
Mm,
Candy bar type games. And so I got with a friend of mine named Brennan, who was ultra interested in doing this, and we came up with the concept of piece of cake games or easy as pie games, and we just combined it into cake pie,
mm.
which all of our games would be a piece of cake to set up, easy as pie to teach.
Love it.
Because if we were going to do this thing, we wanted to be brand first, not just a game.
Yeah.
So the idea for Beach Day came when we were just trying to figure out what we want our first game to be, and I like tile layers a lot. And so I started designing a tile laying game that was actually called Yard Gods. I still like this theme a lot, where you're playing a bunch of ants who are forming cults around different preschoolers who are in
Okay.
this recess yard, and you're trying to create different cults to worship them. So it was like a based on where you're sitting, you want the cards to face you type stuff. And it started there, but my friends who were helping me was like, well, that's not a great theme. I disagree still strongly, but I listened to feedback, and we came up with the idea of seashells and stuff, and it transformed to Beach Day from there. It's the approachable theme that, now is actually being used a lot, surprisingly. Kind of
Mm.
that gaming phenomenon where once you come up with a theme, 10 other games with the same theme come up at the same time. But, that's where Beach Day came from, and it's transformed after these 2.5 years into what it is today.
Yeah, I agree. The themes, it's kind of like with movies too, right? Like you see movies, all of a sudden
Mhm.
you'll see the same kind of theme starting to appear. Yeah, there was recently I played a tile drafting game. I'm trying to think of what it was. That was beach themed. Where you're collecting. Oh, it's everywhere
By the
now.
seashore,
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
seaside.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, by this. It was funny enough. I got comments on the Kickstarter like, "Hey, this is like by the seashore." It's like, well,
not
I
at all.
actually know that is. I know the design. It's
Yeah,
not, but I know the designer and the publisher of those guys. Like, I actually know them. They're friends of mine,
yeah,
and I talked to them about the game because I had no idea about it
yeah.
until I started designing it. And yeah, there are some simulators at the outset, but when we actually look at them, both of us, the publisher and I, which is Golden Seal Games, I'm pretty sure
Mm,
is the name, but like knowing the designer and the publisher, they're not the same. Like they have tile laying and they draft, but like so does Carcassonne, so does
yeah.
every other tile layer to exist. The main difference is that they're beach themed.
It's like
So
every
like
space theme game. They're gonna have
yeah,
planets. They're gonna have stars. They're gonna have space.
yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean they're
It's
the
like
same game.
that's like saying Agricola and whatever Agricola and I'm trying to think of another farming game like Baron Park are the same game,
Yeah,
or Feast for Odin and Baron Park because they're both tiles and stuff like that. Based on where you place your tiles, you get, yeah, it's not the same.
yeah. No, it's cool. And and this plays quick. So I'm gonna get I got on screen here for those who want to check it out. The beach state. So can you explain kind of how this works? Like how do you play it? I mean, it seems fairly straightforward, but I'm gonna get you to describe it versus me because you're gonna be able to describe it obviously better than I can.
Yeah, for sure. So Beach Day is a 1 to 5 player tiling game where you're going to beach and having the most fun in the sand as you can. In the game, you are given a starting card with the sea turtle on it, and you are scoring different pictures are going to be on the cards coming out, which are beach balls, seashells, sand spaces, sand dollars, garbage, and sand castles. So you'll have a pile of cards in front of you that's face down, and then two piles face up. On your turn, you do one of two things. You take either two cards from the face down pile, pick one, and then put it on top of one of the two discard piles, so those two face up piles, or you draw one from the top of one of those two discard piles and you add it to your beach. Now you can add it any way you want. You just can't tuck the card. You can't like do a kitty corner card. Like you can't just connect corners
Right.
and go outside the 2 by 2 grid that are on these square cards. And you can't squish your turtle. Everything else is fair game. You can rotate it and orient it any way you want. So it's really free compared to lots of other small tiling games,
Mm-hmm.
which, I hate the you have to be in a 5 by 5 grid, or you have to cover every single time. I find those restrictions usually not as fun. It's the frustration that doesn't really help with the fun.
Yeah.
Whereas I believe this actually creates a larger play space with more decision space that is, provides a better experience for the player. You keep going till the deck runs out, and then you score based on those. You have 5 public objectives, all doing with have to do with this the water spaces and the sand castles, the seashells. They
Mm-hmm.
all score differently, and you also have a private objective called your crab objective. Because it's selfish, it's just for you. Haha. And whoever has the most points wins, and that's pretty much the entirety of the game.
That's amazing. What I love about these kind of games, and all play is a good analogy, I think, because I'll always have probably two or three all play games in my bag at any given game
Yeah,
night, right? Because there's always, and I had again this just the other night, right, where you have someone shows up a little bit later and they're like, I can see some, is there something I can play while I'm waiting for that game to end?
yeah,
We'll always pull these out because like, okay, here's something you can play quickly in 20 minutes while you wait for this other game to finish, right? Or
yeah,
sometimes I'll have new people coming out to game night where I want to kind of introduce them to the hobby without overwhelming them. I'll often pull out something from all player, or pull out like something that is a gateway game is what I call them, right? Like a gateway game
yeah,
that they can play. Splendor, another good example of that. And kind of get their beak wet, so to speak, before we start pushing them into something too heavy, right? Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember I was at one game night and then someone's like, there's new people that came out and they're like, oh, we're just starting. And they're like, oh, what is there we can play? And the one person's like, well, do you want to join us? We're about to start Dune Imperium. I'm like, whoa, 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 no. No,
yeah,
no, no, no. We don't want you to start in there, all right? You're
yeah,
going for Monopoly. Now let's get you into something.
yeah,
Let's ease you in, so to speak, soften the dough, because I don't want you to never come back, so to speak, right? So
yeah.
yeah, and then in terms of like mapping out manufacturing and this process, did you rely heavily on your network, or is this something you had kind of from your prior games you work on, or how did you go about that path? Like, so for someone else who's looking at getting into this industry, what would you recommend is the best path to kind of do that?
I mean, I think start by being helpful. I think that's the biggest thing is
Yeah,
that, I do nothing about this. Like my background has always been restaurants. The plan was to always go into restaurants and own
yeah,
restaurants. I just fell in love with gaming. I wanted to see if I could do something with it. But, the biggest thing you can do is help other people who know better than you and be earnest about helping them and be honest about why you're doing it. Like, so for instance, All Play, going back to them, I volunteer with them at a lot of conventions.
mm,
And I made clear to the people who were in charge, like, yeah, I'm just trying to get into the convention. I'm trying to get into the industry and see if it's what I want to do. Because I'm honest and I worked hard at their booths, I will say I did work hard. I sold a lot of their games.
yeah,
They are willing to help me and talk to me about it. Same thing with if you know Michael Giuliano from 3WS, great guy. He runs the full 482 as well. Does a lot of stuff. I helped him out at Origins demo some games. I told him what I wanted to do, and he's been a friend of mine ever since. And with Tabletop Submarine, bringing people on for free, not asking anything in return, because lots of people say, that's the one thing about Tabletop Submarine I love. I don't do reviews, so
yeah,
I never ask for a review copy.
yeah,
And publishers love that. If they say, "Hey, I'll give you free content. I just want you to come on, and can we be friends on Facebook?" I can go say hi to them all the time. They know I'm not going to ask for a game. Sometimes they give me a game.
Yeah.
They do because, me and Andrew talk about games we're playing for like the first 10 minutes of the podcast. Sometimes they'll give me a game because they just like me, which is a great blessing. But like, it's the earnestness to help people that when I decide to do this,
Yeah.
when I went and asked people like, how do I find a manufacturer? What's the way to do this? They were willing to help me and say, hey, I'll point you here, here, and here.
Mhm.
So it's the everything that is accumulated with this is hopefully just good karma coming back to me of years. I'll say that literally years of trying just to be helpful, not even thinking about
Yeah.
myself in lots of ways.
That's great advice. It's funny the conditioning that most publishers, like, we're all conditioned, right? That when someone's reaching out, that they want something free, right? Or they want you to pay.
Yeah.
And I've actually run into that where I've approached a publisher. I'll see them on Kickstarter and I'll be like, ooh, that looks interesting. They would probably be a good guest. And I'll reach out and say, hey, would you like to come on the podcast? And I've had sometimes them respond back saying, oh, we're all out of review copies. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not a reviewer, man.
That's not what I said. Yeah.
I want to talk to you. I want to learn your story. I don't care about reviewing your game. Like, we'll talk about your game. I don't need a copy, right? Like, that is not conditional on us chatting. And quite frankly, we're not going to spend a lot of time. We're going to spend most of our time just talking about your story, right? Because that's what really I'm most interested in. And then usually they'll change their tune. I find myself often, I'm again skeptical, because anybody that runs a campaign knows as soon as you launch your campaign, you're going to get inundated with
the wolves.
Yeah, the wolves, right? And they're gonna say, "Hey, oh man, I saw your game. It looks so. I'm so
inspired.
Yeah, I'm so impressed."
It's like, shut up. No, you're not.
I'm so impressed by what you had, and we got this thing. We do reviews. This is the size of our audience. And my big thing is I never pay for reviews, ever.
Yeah,
I won't pay for content, and I get it. Sometimes content creators get large enough where they want to monetize, and they say, "Hey, and now we're starting to charge." I'm like, "That's cool. We can still be friends." But I'm going to focus my efforts and my in my launches on content creators who are doing it because they find the game interesting. They want they want to do some content on it, not because I'm paying them. So I just, as a kind of a base policies, I don't pay for content on any of my games. But man, do you get inundated? And I'll often say, I had one today too. Someone reached out and said, "Hey, just remind me, do you charge for your content?" And they're like, "Oh yes, actually, here's our media kit." I'm like, so sorry, thank you, but that's not something that we do. Others do, and that's fine. And I'm not blaming you that everybody's gotta make money somehow, but that's just not our model, right? But yeah, you're gonna get inundated, and those are the ones I find most disingenuous when they start off with that hook, right? Like, I'm inspired.
Yeah.
Or, man, I was amazed. Man, you're killing it. It's like, really? Because what I'm looking at, I'm not killing it.
Yeah, it's like I'm not quite funded yet, so
yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things.
And so for you and in the team, like I know that, like, Andrew, we had him on the podcast as well, and you talked about Wine Cellar. And do you get a chance to kind of look under the hood with him at all and say, "Hey, Andrew, like, how did you do this, or how did you do that?" Or like, are you able to kind of tap into some of even your close colleagues on some of these podcasts you're working on to get a little bit of help as well? Or
as far as the campaign goes, or
campaign, or even just knowledge, right? Like, because again, these guys are going to be a wealth of knowledge in terms of, like,
oh yeah, I mean,
things.
So yeah, I am confident that I have the ability to know how to do everything.
Yeah.
Like, I know like how these things are supposed to go.
Yeah.
Like, just from listening to podcasts, talking with people, interviewing them, I know. Now executing it, completely different story, as you would know.
Sure. Yeah.
And I do, especially with games, I do tap, Andrew. Like, that's the thing about Beach Day, is that, it's been tested by some of the best designers in the industry.
That's awesome.
Like, it's been through the ringer, and it shows, because, everyone who's played it has been like, wow, this feels really clean.
Yeah.
Like, for first time design. It's like, well, I've been doing this for a long time, and the people who have play tested this have been doing this for even longer than I have. And so, it's being able to tap into that is, of course, I give back in lots of ways, so that there's that equilibrium, that, that back and forth, balance.
Yeah.
But if as long as you're a good person, you're not, I'll say, you're not predatory, you're not a shark in the water in the pond that board games is, people are going to help you.
Yeah, it still surprises me how open most people are and how responsive they are in this
Yeah.
industry. And like we were talking about this a number of episodes ago. I forget who it was I was talking to about, but they were shocked at how accessible some of these big names were, and it's the truth, right? Like your biggest barrier often is yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because this is probably the most open industry you will ever be in,
Yeah.
right? And the success is very formulaic, right? So it's almost paint by numbers how to create a game, where to go. Like this information's all around us, and a good example
Yeah.
would be Jamie Stegmaier, right? I know he's been out of the Kickstarter game for a while,
Yeah.
but he still has lots of great advice, right, on how to go about kind of navigating everything. Your most recent
Yeah.
one of your most recent episodes you had on Tabletop Submarine with JT Smith. I just had that playing
Yeah.
in the car the other day. Great episode. I mean, you guys are getting into tariffs, right? And you're getting
Yeah.
his opinion on, here's the impact of the industry. And here's the difference between short run manufacturing and long run manufacturing, and why the Chinese are so good, and why this industry is being devastated, right, by the tariffs versus say some other industries, right? And
Yeah.
hearing somebody from a first person kind of perspective be able to kind of lay it out and explain it and say, well, this is, I mean, he's a manufacturer, right? And
Yeah, he is.
and he's explaining to you as plain as he can be, here's the whys, the hows, and how it impacts everyone. And it's not coming from a biased perspective at all. Like he's in the weeds. He's one of the people that produce games, right?
Yeah.
And he's American based too. But it's not as simple as just saying, hey, I don't want to make games in China. I'm just going to go make them in the States. Why don't we just make them domestically? Well, that's a lot harder than you think,
Yeah.
right? A lot harder than you think. And so having someone like that as a resource is pretty cool too, to kind of get his perspective, right? Do you have
It was pretty cool.
any big guests coming up on Tabletop Submarine? Like, is there, like, that one was juicy. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of episodes we have recorded. Um, we have it fluctuates, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And we get most of our bigger guests during the off summer because we know, kind of insider baseball, once summer hits, especially between like May and like August, October, basically between like beginning of Origins and Essen, it's really hard to get a hold of like those big names.
Yeah.
And like if you want to ask them, hey, do you have time to come on? No, they don't, because they're doing three different shows, Gen Con. We leave them alone, so we invite some smaller people on.
Yeah.
We do have some great guests coming up from people like from New Zealand and from all over the world who are coming on to the podcast now. We have a few big names who we can pocket who want to come on the podcast. Like I'll say that, like if, for instance, Jamie Stegmaier you just brought up, I'm sure that if we wanted to talk to him, we could reach out and talk to him. He'd come on the show.
Yeah.
Just from based on the connections we have, and
Yeah.
he knows. I'm pretty confident based on conversations I've had around. Like I've never met Jamie in person, but if we asked, he'd probably be aware of who we are and come on.
Yeah.
We could do Jamie Stegmaier. We could do. I know a ton of different designers. We've had, Chad from 25th Century. He does want to come on. He just, it's the time and
He's a
stuff
busy
like that.
dude. There's an
Oh, he's so
example of
busy.
someone where if you look at 25th Century Games and the amount of content they like in terms of games that they pump out, right? Like I think they're like at least three titles a year, and
Way more than that. Yeah.
yeah. And you go to the conventions and he's working the booth. He's like a one man show, eh? Like he
yeah.
brokers everything out. Like he's got obviously an extended team,
Yeah.
but it's not like he's in a big corporate office. It's him. Like
Yeah.
I was shocked that it was just him when him and I were talking behind the scenes, just based on how I've seen him literally everywhere and the amount of games he's. I mean, I got several of them on my shelf. I mean, good quality games. But yeah, it can be a grind for some people, right? But you're right. Yeah, getting him on probably during the summer is not going to happen. But he's the kind of guy that maybe in the fall you'd be able to get him on. Jamie shocked me. I think he was at like our episode like 4 or 5 of the podcast.
Yeah.
Like I was like no one had ever heard of me. I still don't think people have heard of me, but at that time no one had heard of me, and he still came on the podcast. So he's very giving to this industry.
Yeah.
Very, very kind with his time, and that's why I consider him a leader in the industry, right? Because people
it was a really surreal moment because when I was checking my backers on Kickstarter, and I saw Jamie's name. He backs a lot of Kickstarters,
Yeah.
but he doesn't back every Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So when I saw he's actually did back Beach Day, I was like, okay, well, I feel good no matter what now.
Yeah.
Because, it makes me feel like I did something right with this campaign and that I did something where like, hey, he thinks that we look professional enough to give us the support. So that was a good moment for me. But yeah, there's again, most of these people in the industry, 95% of them are awesome and they'll give you their time if you ask and are genuine.
Yeah. No, he's a good dude. If people want to follow you in this campaign, how best do they do that? Like, is there a social channel they should click into? Obviously, if they go to Kickstarter and type in Beach Day, they're going to find the campaign. I'm going to put a link in the show notes as well, so people can easily find it.
Thank you.
As well as I'll put a link to the Tabletop Submarine podcast, so people can easily find that. But if they want to follow you on social media, or if they want to join like your journey on, so how do they do that?
Facebook is the best way, CakePie Games Facebook,
CakePie
or I have
Games?
a TikTok channel as well I try to keep up on,
Oh, sweet.
which is Play CakePie Games.
Play CakePie Games. Nice.
Yes.
Silly dances, or do you get more serious than that?
It's a mixture. No, you don't want to see this dance, trust me. You don't. It'd be an ugly sight. But well, compared to some of the stuff you see on TikTok, it might not be as ugly, but that's neither here or there.
Yeah.
But I usually either talk about Beach Day's progress or I'm actually sharing things that inspire me as a young publisher.
Oh, that's cool.
So like I'll pull out a game like, yeah, this is why this game makes me think. I can recommend it, and this is why it inspires us as CakePie type stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. What's the next steps for you? Like, are you gonna do another game after this one, or what's your plan?
We're waiting to see what happens.
Okay.
We don't want to count our chickens before they hatch. And so once this campaign ends, we'll know what we want to do and we'll go forward from there. But we have like I don't want to get into all of it. We have like three or four different like plans based on what happens. So that's all I'll say, but we aren't
amazing.
unprepared for any situation.
Well, Josh, at that point, we will get you back on because I'll be excited to talk to you with those plans. And we got to figure out a time I can hop back on the Tabletop Submarine podcast. Love the cross-pollinate and maybe
For
we can
sure.
just
Yeah.
talk games at some point. I want to wish you all the best in this campaign, my friend. I hope people check it out, throw their support your way. And man, tell the gang I said hi.
Will do, sir.
All right, buddy. You take care. Cheers.
You take care. Bye.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.